Welcome to the Two Blokes Chatting radio show on 94.7 The Pulse. Music, interviews, news, and, well, two blokes chatting. Now, here are the two blokes.
Yeah, well, I'm very excited. It was not in this studio, but the one next door in November of 2017 when then the Surf Coast Councillor Carol McGregor came into the studio with a gentleman by the name of Daryl Pelchen to put some scope, if you like, around an announcement that very morning at the Surf Coast Council in Torquay of a $350 million elite sports training program in my little suburb of Mottawarri, and my jaw immediately hit the floor and thought, Mottawarri? What the hell would they want to come to Mottawarri for? It's been 3 years of pretty intense scrutiny through all sorts of channels, and finally a positive announcement from the state government this week. And Daryl Pelchen has kindly come back to talk more about it now that it's real. And Daryl, good morning to you.
Good morning, and thanks for having me, Rob.
It's an absolute pleasure.
Tell you what, that's the longest introduction we have ever had to a guest.
Yeah,
Daryl.
I thought we needed to put some polish
well done,
on.
you. That's impressive.
It's been a long time, Daryl. We know of it for 3 years, and one of the amazing things how it was kept secret for that long, because it's been 10 years at least in development for you personally for this to come together. So let's start off from a sporting aspect. Why Mottawarri?
Look, there's a range of reasons that the most significant are really the natural and built assets that complement the site. So there are all ranges of considerations, including the proximity to an international airport, and we've got one in Avalon, then education and other sporting facilities, and also the natural assets were incredibly important. The real one for us, though, was that we needed 300 acres minimum, and we've got 550 acres rezoned, 265 acres are a conservation precinct, and it is really the site itself and the attributes associated with that site that really have led to the decision for Mottawarri to get it. And truly, without wanting to speak it up, Rob, it is a win, a real win for the region, a real win for the state, and we think it's a real win for Australia.
We've got it's divided it into two aspects, and I'm very grateful that you'll be back on our Thursday morning show to talk more about the social and environmental impact. So we'll focus on the sports side of it at the moment. How did the idea come about of something of this significance? Let's put aside the Mottawarri thing. Let's just talk about Australia. Why is it needed in Australia?
Again, for two real reasons. The first is that we can trade on our reputation in the sporting and major event space, and Australia is as good as you get in that space in the Southern Hemisphere, and Victoria is the best of being able to deliver that in Australia. So it was always coming to Victoria, but the need is motivated by the seasonal offset. So there's a want to train at this facility, and it's not a match day venue, it's simply a training facility out of season, so it'll be winter up there, summer down here, and vice versa. And the second is the need for unique media content. And what that really means is that the world is getting smaller in a electronic media sense, and APAC is where all the growth is, and we're talking enormous businesses here, enormous numbers. For many people, they don't really believe it in terms of Australia, but the metrics are enormous in world sport. If I was just to look at sponsorship numbers, the sponsorship industry globally is somewhere north of $60 billion per year as a business, and of that sector, greater than 70% of sponsorship actually goes to sport. And the quarter of the world that's growing is the APAC region. It's growing 5.7% year on year. Currently, APAC rates number 2 in that space. The Americas, or North America, is the big one, but APAC's not far away. And what that really means in a sporting sense is that we're in the quarter of the world that's really growing, and it's big business that actually pays for elite sport. So it's really driven by big business.
So, Daryl, it's Neil here, and thanks for joining us on Two Blokes Chatting radio show. A question, when Rob and I started to come up with an idea of a radio show. I think we were having a stubby each, and hey, why don't we do a radio show? How does something like, how does the conversation start? I tell you what we'll do. Let's create an elite sporting facility that's going to cost hundreds of millions of dollars, and let's stick it in Geelong. How does that conversation start?
Well, it doesn't really start out quite like that, although I am probably trading on a lot of friends and family that are directly involved in lead sport globally. So it's something that's sat in my life for a long time. I'm an architect by training, and I know a lot of people that are in this sporting space. It's the short answer here is it's a combination of many conversations over a long period of time. In true terms or real terms, it's had 8 solid years of gestation. There was always an awareness, from secondary school, and that was a long time ago for me, what sport actually can do, and it's just through those relationships. So without naming names, I've always had the exposure to people that are operating all around the world, and what's really amazing is you can go into an elite sports facility anywhere in the world and you'll hear an Australian accent. We're really good in this space, and we need really a facility to demonstrate here how good we really are.
Daryl, you mentioned earlier the connections that made the site favourable, and they are the Deakin University, obviously, I guess something like the Epworth Hospital for medical stuff, but the Geelong Footy Club and elite training program, it popped up this week in the Addy, making some connection. What is the established connection with these aforementioned elite programs in the region?
So we need to establish relationships in one form or another, ideally with all of the regional interests. This project was to serve the regional interest primarily, and we'll maintain that focus. In a formal sense, there's a lot to be done. We wait for planning to actually establish what that offer can be, but our hope is that we can actually serve the regional interest most strongly, and that's how this project has really been conceived. What I will say, without speaking for Geelong, we've had incredibly powerful sports organisations or representatives in front of Geelong, and without exception, they've commented to me how impressed they are with Geelong. Again, I'll make the headline comment that Australia is really good at sport, and Victoria is the space where it actually happens best.
I guess from a business perspective, if we just look at it purely from a business point of view, I guess what this also does is it creates enough interest that it's not just going to be a facility that turns up and is sort of isolated. Other industries presumably are going to go, you know what, it's really worth thinking about Geelong, because not only have they got an international airport and but they've also got this elite sporting facility. Surely that's got to be broadly, is that a word? Broadly beneficial to the, it's not a word, but we'll use it, beneficial to the region just beyond what it actually provides.
Well and truly, the headline comment here is that this facility works hardest electronically and via data globally. So we use the world's largest advertising agency to promote this facility, and they've been involved with us for more than 4.5 years. They're responsible for every third ad that's placed anywhere in the world, and they're directly connected again to big business, so 340 of the top 500 Fortune listed companies globally. It is big business, and big business uses sport to promote what it does. What's really interesting is that big business, without being wise across the board, is really about promoting now technology and sustainability and wellness and social purpose, believe it or not, and they use sport 70% of the time to help that. The other point I would make is that people need to understand, or your listeners need to understand, just how big the social media followings are of these premier sporting teams. So, I'd encourage your listeners just to Google the followers, for the EPL, just to pick on them. The top, in terms of the data that I've seen, so someone that like Real Madrid has a social media following of, say, 9 times the Australian population. So we need to actually understand the metrics. We need to understand the numbers. This facility will promote brand Australia, and it'll use elite sport as the halo setting to actually do that.
And I guess there's some opportunity for something like what Manchester City has done in the soccer to link with a Melbourne-based club as Melbourne City. Presumably there's opportunities for, basketball from the US, soccer clubs from other parts of the world to do something similar with other Australian teams?
Well and truly. Look, the process is demanding, and rightly so. It's a big ask of government to actually request 550 acres to be rezoned to something that doesn't have a precedent, certainly in the Southern Hemisphere. So planning can't anticipate this, and what that means in real terms is that you put through a pretty demanding process involving all three levels of government, and that evaluates everything at every level, and it does it in a robust, independent way. And what it really has shown to people that have been sceptical about the capacity of this project to actually be here and serve literally the rest of the world is that this works, and this works incredibly well, because mainly for what we take for granted, the clean air, food security, and our natural advantages, whether that be, transport, or whether it be, the physical setting. So there's no question that this works. There is no question that the elite sporting teams are going to come. They're the heroes. They're the ones that everybody runs to. But there's a big troop that actually follows these teams as well, and they're elite rights holders. They're elite sponsors and organisations. So it is a best-in-class, and it's sort of the equivalent of having the Commonwealth Games work as a viewership audience, but rather than running for a 2-week period or less, this runs effectively 52 weeks a year.
Daryl, my interest in international sport is somewhat limited, but for all the reasons you said before about wellness and community and connection, I'm well and truly aware of the value of sport to any community, and you don't have to look too far away from the proposed site to see lots of communities whose footy clubs, cricket clubs, bowls clubs, all of that stuff are the lifeblood of it. How can these small country towns and slightly bigger ones, Torquay, but let's talk at Anglesea, Winchelsea, Birregurra, Mottawarre, Inverleigh for that matter. What will this facility potentially mean for them?
So, Rob, excuse the jargon, but they talk about sweating the asset. You don't put $350 million in a paddock to sit idle at any time. And really, this facility is geared at a sporting level for the elite, for national teams and for weekend warriors. But it works because of wellness tourism. There are a lot of people that are interested in wellness, and again, sport is the expression of that. So what that means to local organisations and anyone from a local school to the CFA to a sporting club is that we'll make this facility or parts of this facility available to them, and that will happen at different times in different ways. It will be aspirational opportunity for many of these people, but physically allow each of these organisations to do things that they wouldn't otherwise have dreamt about. So just to give you a pretty lame example, CORA will have the best virtual reality studio in the Southern Hemisphere without question. That's there because of positional training for athletes, but it's able to do much more than that. So if CFA guys want to strap on the right helmet, they can actually learn a whole lot of things about actually being physically in a fire space. We can do that for a primary school child, that they can actually literally go and watch heroes at certain times, but it's to become an educational facility that actually provides opportunities that people would not just dream about otherwise.
Yeah, and this is the sort of thing, because I remember the first presentation, you used the word community a lot, and I think through the scrutiny, incredible scrutiny the organisation's going through, that's connected, that community connection. But it also comes with a degree of scepticism that, again, $350 million at Mottawarre, how on earth is the community going to connect? But there will continually be pathways that will be open, that the locals, the minnows of the sporting world can make a real physical connection.
That's completely right, and that was always the conceptual intent, and we'll honour that. There's no question about our ability to actually do that. Some parts at some times are incredibly sensitive, whether they because of privacy or security. Physically, the most sensitive sports components are the soft top playing surfaces. Just so your listeners understand that there's a spotter that actually walks the facilities before the elite talent turns up, and they expect billiard table type playing surfaces. They expect unbelievable quality of or a standard of facilities. So some of those will be heavily protected. Generally, though, the facilities available for the total community use at certain times. There will be a very small percentage that's not, and it's both outward looking and inward looking. And what that means, if you look at, say, the accommodation component of CORA, is that if you have got a true elite team staying that's needing security, a floor plate of the hotel might be closed down, or half a floor plate of the hotel may be closed down, but the rest will have the general public. It is a facility to train and to stay and to have time out, and that's why it works as a type of purpose-built campus. It's not a university. It can't work like a university. It's a special purpose-built facility, the like of which doesn't exist really anywhere else in the world, but there are direct comparisons, and we will certainly be the best sport facility in the Southern Hemisphere.
So picking up on that, you say there's no direct comparison. What's the closest thing that's kicking around in the world at the moment that people go, oh, okay, it's like that, but on steroids? It's, no pun intended. That's probably a really bad thing to say. I got halfway through that sentence, so you know what I mean.
I do. There are 5 gold standard training facilities in the world, all in the Northern Hemisphere. Probably the closest to us, not how it works architecturally, is St George's Park in the UK, 2 hours north of London, literally in a paddock as well. It was a facility conceived primarily to look after soccer, and it's growing to look after rugby and others. The best in these states, in the US, is Tampa-based facility in Florida, or the IMG facility in Florida. It's possibly pound for pound the best training facility anywhere in the world, and their ingredients from there, and also the Real Madrid facility in Spain and the National Sporting Complex in Malaysia and the Singapore Sports Hub that have informed this. Again, the beauty of the long gestation is that you get to actually work through this many, many ways, and you really shape this with so many people contributing. In real terms, more than 200 people have worked on this project for the last 4 or 5 years, and they've done that globally. I want to say publicly that the process is demanding. It asks a lot of everyone, including government, including bureaucrats, including the proponent, but most importantly, it asks a lot of the general public. And I can say directly to anyone that the project is better now than when it was first announced 3 years ago, and it's better because of the contribution that so many have made, including people that don't actually want the project to happen. So we think we've listened. We've certainly shaped the project to try and provide, as much as we possibly can, the best facility that we can put on this location.
Yeah, on the back of that comment, I'm quite intrigued. There was some initial negative feedback about, there's been no consultation. You made this plan, which took 7 years, and you did it to keep it incredibly quiet, which amazed me. But it's 3 years then. There's been lots of public meetings and public contribution. Have you been somewhat frustrated to a degree for the length of time, but then maybe on the other side of the coin, very grateful for the length of time to turn it into the better facility that you talk about?
The honest answer is yes, there's a level of frustration, and it's a lot easier to talk about it now once you're through it than when you're in the middle of it. You're not really concerned at all about direct interaction or the alternative view. In fact, in many ways, the alternative view actually informs you more than people saying they like it or they approve. It's the alternative view that you really need to consider and evaluate. planning talks always about a net benefit. It's impossible in many considerations to say we can do 100 out of 100 for everyone. That's just not able to be achieved. But the short answer and the right answer, which I'm pleased to say publicly, is the project is definitely a better project now because of the contribution that so many people have actually brought to this. We have been reliant on so many people, so much capacity, so much goodwill, so much generosity to actually get to where we are, and it's incredibly humbling. It's not about one or two or three people. This is a project to represent what we know is one of the best places anywhere in the world, because the rest of the world is telling us that. You know, for the last 10 years, I've got to actually see this location through an international lens. And for us that live here, we're incredibly fortunate that what we have here as a natural setting in terms of the assets and in terms of the people is envied and rated so highly throughout the world.
There's a few things that will flow on, have the negative connection. One of the main ones, of course, is the environmental aspect, which we'll touch more on next Thursday. I think it's a different forum, but just a couple of others that still linger. And one is that this whole thing is a guise for a property development, and as soon as a few houses have gone up and you sell the land, you'll just move away and leave a mess. Let's deal with that one. But also the other big aspect is the potential employment opportunity, which we've talked about as being something like 1,600. What local opportunity will there be there amongst that, or is there a danger that could be all sourced outside?
So I'll pick those off in two. So that in terms of the employment during construction, our builder is Multiplex, a Tier 1 world recognised builder. The process involves what's called an ECI, which is an early contractor involvement, and part of that documentation nominates the performance of this in terms of how it's actually procured. So what Multiplex are providing for us is a commitment to 75% local content, and that local content is for both labour and material, and the local is defined by the G21 region, so the 5 municipalities within that region. During the construction phase, Multiplex are telling us there will be 1,000 builders on site. That is a lot of jobs. What's really amazing is that once you start to do the flow-on effect from all of this, whether they be supply or consumption, that actually results in the equivalent of full-time employment positions of 3,600 jobs. So again, the metrics of this for something in regional Australia are enormous. The 350 million that's pushed into this for construction actually results in $1.6 billion coming into the regional economy based on that 75% commitment from Multiplex. So they are big numbers, but most importantly, during its operational phase, when it's fully operational, there'll be 670 full-time equivalent positions on site. And it will be for a diverse range of jobs. They won't just be of a particular type. It'll involve all sectors of our commercial community, and what that really means is that the 670 jobs will result in the equivalent of 1,040 plus full-time employment positions. And many, I can't say categorically how many of those will come locally, but clearly most of them will be local. In some instances, there are specialists. So if I was to pick on, say, the medical space, one of the best diagnostic cardiologists anywhere in the world lives in Brisbane. Clearly we can't have that talent here. He would literally do a lot of the assessment remotely. The work would actually be done at CORA at a level, mainly to do with recovery, but he would then visit the site and use local medical resources to actually perform that medical intervention. So some of them are incredibly specialised, but in the main they're not, and they include a wide variety of job types. One of the motivators for this, and this came very strongly from my partner's involvement with the project, Olivia Tippler. She recognised very early in this project the capacity for CORA to actually help a lot of people that have become disempowered by having children or moving from one region to another, and they become isolated. And it means really they're doing, they might be employed currently, but they're doing work that they're able to do easily, and they're able to do a lot of other tasks as well. So they're sort of operating at lesser efficiency or lesser capacity, and this project will actually enable these people to do things locally that they won't have to travel for. And again, that's one of the primary motivators for the total project.
So we will have no doubt someone of a dignitary who will wander down here with a silver-plated shovel at some point to dig a hole to demonstrate that we've started. When's that likely to occur? And when's the first person going to come in and use the facility?
I'd expect, subject to a few variables, I'd expect this to happen in the second quarter of next year, that works physically start in one form or another. The most important thing here is that the planning approval, and it's a very robust document, says that the first piece has to be to do with the restoration of the conservation precinct. What that means is that a lot of the activity will be centering on just restoring the landscape. We expect then that it will slowly crank up over that first 12 months, and with the full-on building taking 24 months or so to complete. And our target is to have this fully operational in the first quarter of 2024.
And Daryl, just to touch back on that real estate aspect, the building itself, the main building, will be the first part of the building, so that any idea that some houses are going to go up and you run away is that not possible?
It is not possible. So the planning process, and probably to come back to the question previously that I didn't answer directly, is that the process spells out guaranteed outcomes. That's what planning tries to do. And this is not a lot of things, and one thing it is not is a residential play. So the planning is prescriptive. It simply says what you're allowed to build where and in what sequence. And the work that starts first is all to do with the conservation. There's no trade-out ability. There's no way to on-sell or move the nature of what the project is. For us, it's really, really clear, and the message in the last 8 years for us hasn't altered one iota, and that is that it will be an elite sports training facility underpinned by wellness tourism. It'll also be the largest social enterprise business in Victoria, and it is to serve this region. It's the clear message, and it will trade on what big business does. It's not about how we've done things, it's how we're going to do things, and they will centre on technology, sustainability, wellness, and social purpose. That's what this project's about.
Daryl, thank you very much for your time. There'll be more questions, but we will get to them Thursday. The social stuff, the environmental stuff, which will interest many people in this region, is becoming more and more of an issue, and then the tourism aspect as well, which opens up the hinterland and Surf Coast and beyond. But I think you've touched on the sporting side really well. We appreciate your openness, and after doing media all over Australia all the week, for you to be on this little humble show, I greatly appreciate it.
No, it's my pleasure. Thank you very much.